Negroes working hard or hardly working? That's the question. Let's find out the answer and continue the journey with Fredrick Law Olmsted as he entertains a discussion with the slave master in 1852 Virginia. And what I want you to do is pay close attention to the frustration of this master as he voices his opinion about the work ethic of those they called Negroes, right? Now let's open up the PDF version of the book titled A Journey in the Seaboard Slave States and turn to page 104, where Olmsted writes this. A well-informed capitalist and slaveholder remarked that Negroes could not be employed in cotton factories. I said that I understood they were so in Charleston and some other places at the South.
It may be so, yet,
he answered,
but they will have to give it up.
Implying that, sure, Negroes may be hired in some cotton factories in different places, but sooner or later the owners will have to stop doing that, and he's about to explain why. The reason was, he said, that the Negro could never be trained to exercise judgment. What does it mean to exercise judgment? In this context, it means to critically think, make decisions, and respond appropriately to situations as they arise. He claimed that Negroes were incapable of doing that, and here's what else he told Olmsted. He cannot be made to use his mind. He always depends on machinery doing its own work, and cannot be made to watch it. He neglects it until something is broken or there is great waste. This was part of his gripe with Negro laborers and why he claimed that they could not be employed in the cotton factory. Now listen to what Olmsted quotes him saying.
We have tried reward and punishments, but it makes no difference. It's his nature, and you cannot change it.
Here's another example of the supposed Negro natural inferiority, right? They don't use their mind, and neither punishment nor reward can get them to change that, right? Because it's deep down in there. It's inherent from his point of view. Here we go.
All men are indolent and have a disinclination to labor, but this is a great deal stronger in the African race than in any other.
He claimed that all people are indolent or lazy and avoid work. But the people who have recent ancestry with those of Africa display a different type of laziness, right? That's his opinion. And here's what else he said.
In working niggers, we must always calculate that they will not labor at all except to avoid punishment, and they will never do more than just enough to save themselves from being punished, and no amount of punishment will prevent their working carelessly and indifferently. It always seems on the plantation as if they took pains to break all the tools and spoil all the cattle that they possibly can, even when they know they'll be directly punished for it.
So it appears he experienced the problem of expectation. He had an unrealistic expectation which caused frustration, right? In his imagination, he pictured a world where the enslaved workers were using every bit of their energy to accomplish a task for him and at the same time never get paid for it, right? He envisioned unpaid laborers working with the same intention as well-paid laborers, right? And when these images in his imagination did not transfer over into the physical reality, he blamed the slaves, right? Instead of finding fault with his own irrational expectations. The enslaved responded how they were supposed to respond in that environment, right? And the fact that they did respond in such a way is also what helped people realize that extracting unpaid labor from humans was not a sustainable system in the long run. Hence, Negroes could not be hired in the cotton factories like he previously mentioned. Now listen to this. As to rewards, he said,
they only want to support life. They will not work for anything more. And in this country, it would be hard to prevent their getting that.
I thought this opinion of the power of rewards was not exactly confirmed by the narrative we had just heard, but I said nothing. Olmsted was skeptical of a portion of this man's opinion, but he did not push the issue. So the man continued and said this.
If you could move,
he continued,
all the white people from the whole Seaboard district of Virginia and give it up to the Negroes that are on it now, just leave them to themselves, in 10 years' time there would not be an acre of land cultivated and nothing would be produced except what grew spontaneously.
Which would only be the weeds. Now, obviously, he's exaggerating with this statement, but he's using this hypothetical scenario to show his perspective on the little initiative the blacks had towards work, right? So his view was that if you removed all the whites from the district then basically nothing worthwhile would ever be done by the blacks, right? They just do enough to survive and get by, right? Now let's continue. But are they not improving, said I. That is a point in which I am much interested, and I should be glad to know what is your observation. Have they not as a race improved during the last 100 years, do you not think?
Oh, yes, indeed, very greatly. During my time, I can remember how they were 40 years ago. They have improved 2,000%. Don't you think so?
He asked another gentleman.
Yes, certainly. And you may find them now on the isolated old plantations in the back country, just as I recollect them when I was a boy, stupid and moping, and with no more intelligence than when they first came from Africa. But all about where the country is much settled, their condition is vastly ameliorated, they are treated much better, they are fed better, and they have much greater educational privileges.
Educational privileges? I asked in surprise.
I mean by preaching and religious instruction. They have the Bible read to them a great deal, and there is preaching for them all over the country.
For a minute, this threw Olmsted off. He was like, what educational privileges are you talking about, right? The Bible was the educational privileges provided to the blacks in the Old South. And one of the reasons they were instructed in the Bible was to instill obedience and submission into them as slaves, right? How do we know that? Because the good old Reverend Charles Colcock Jones tells us in his 1831 book titled The Religious Instruction for the Negroes, right? This book right here is called How to Make a Negro Christian, but it entails that account in here, right? So let's go in here and turn to the section where it is provided at page 52, if you have the book, and let's see what the good old Reverend writes. Here it is. It is a matter of astonishment that there should be any objection at all for the duty of giving religious instruction to our Negroes, and the benefits flowing from it should be obvious to all. The benefits we conceive to be incalculably great, and some of them are the following. 1. There will be a better understanding of the mutual relations of master and servant. 2. There will be greater subordination and a decrease of crime amongst the Negroes. You hear that? There's a good reason why the whites excluded blacks from all other education other than the Bible, and only the willingly blind are unable to see that. The whites used the religion as another one of their tools for constructing the Negro slave consciousness, right? They gave them an elementary interpretation of the Bible, which yielded minimal power because it told them to wait on Jesus and to reap their rewards in the next life, while the whites were getting their rewards in this life, right? You see the game being played here? So what happened was the slaves ended up building their culture largely around religion, the religion that they were handed. And that's one of the main reasons that the people who come out of the lineage of the slaves are still attached to it today, right? Mystery solved. So let's put this book up right here and let's continue moving on.
They have preachers of their own. Right smart ones they are too, some of them.
Do they? Said I. I thought that was not allowed by law.
Well, it is not. That is, they are not allowed to have meetings without some white man is present. They must not preach unless a white man hears what they say. However, they do. On my plantation, they always have a meeting on Sundays, and I have sometimes, when I have been there, told my overseer, "You must go up there to the meeting. You know the law requires it." And he would start as if he was going, but would just look in and go by. He wasn't going to wait for them.
He then spoke of a minister whom he owned and described him as a very intelligent man. He knew almost the whole of the Bible by heart. He was a fine-looking man, a fine head, and a very large frame. He had been a sailor and had been in New Orleans and New York and many foreign ports.
He could have left me at any time for 20 years, if he had wished to,
he said.
I asked him once how he would like to live in New York. Oh, he did not like New York at all. Negroes were not treated well there. There was more distinction made between them and white folks than there was here.
Oh, they ain't no place in the world like old Virginia for niggas, massa.
And that's how it went, right? Now understand that the consciousness was never intended to remain like that person was. It was meant to evolve and not to remain a Negro, a black person, or an N-word, right? These were phases. And in the 21st century, the final phase for some is to complete the transition, right? I want you to think about that. So from here, what we're going to do is pause and we're going to pick up in the next commentary where Olmsted gets a glimpse of the Christian religion as practiced by the slaves in Virginia, which some of the practices raised a lot of questions for him. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. But right now, what I want to do is thank you for watching all the way into the end. My name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I'll see you in the free world.